In Laboratory Reddit, today's story is...
My sick wife begged me to pay for her treatments until the doctors gave me an envelope with results that nobody expected. 3 years of lies revealed. I am a 42-year-old man living in Austin, Texas. I have been married to Amelia, 43, for 6 years. We weren't exactly a cover couple for social media, but I believed we had a relationship based on loyalty and mutual respect. However, what I thought did not coincide with Amelia's reality. I thought I had married a mature woman, not someone who acted like an attention-seeking teenager. As you will see throughout this publication, I was completely wrong about her. Everything fell apart when Amelia became seriously ill. At first, it looked like severe food poisoning. She was constantly vomiting without being able to retain anything in her stomach. She looked pale, weak, and dehydrated. She resisted going to the hospital because of her terror of needles and IVs. I tried to take care of her at home, but her condition worsened more and more, and I had no medical knowledge. There was no alternative. She needed professional attention, and despite her phobia, I took her to the medical center for a diagnosis and proper treatment. Upon arrival, she was immediately admitted to the emergency room because her condition was worse than we imagined. I held her hand to calm her down, but something didn't add up. I guess the body senses when a catastrophe is approaching, although I had no idea of the horror she would face in the next 48 hours. Amelia's condition stabilized after a few hours, thanks to the medical team, but she was still weak and pale. The doctors wanted to run some tests because, although they had treated her symptoms, they didn't know the cause. The results would be ready in 2 days, and based on them, they would decide on treatment or discharge. I stayed by her side constantly during that time. After 12 hours, they reduced her medication, and she became dehydrated again, which set off alarm bells for the medical team. On the 3rd day, a nurse handed me an envelope with the blood test results, indicating that the doctor would explain them soon. Amelia slept, connected to an intravenous line, looking fragile. I mentioned to her that I had the results, but she said she felt too weak, and asked me to open them and read them for her. By the time I finished opening the envelope and took out the papers, she had already fallen deeply asleep. It was understandable considering her medication and symptoms, but the person who would start to experience symptoms would be me with what I was reading about her diagnosis. She had tested positive for an intimately transmitted bacterial infection. For a few minutes, I went through all the stages of grief: denial, sadness, anger. I frantically searched for information about the diagnosis on the internet, and the answers were not what I expected. I don't know how long I sat there before the doctor called me into his office. I pointed to the result, stammering that there must be some mistake. He replied, "I'm sorry, but the tests are conclusive. We will start treatment immediately. It is essential that you complete the course of antibiotics." My head felt like it was going to explode. My wife had an STD. The implications were obvious. We all know how they're contracted, but she was completely in denial. When Amelia woke up, I silently handed her the report. Her face lost what little color it had left as she read. Through her tears, she told me she could explain everything. She just needed me to listen. I wanted to know what kind of explanation she had for contracting a sexually transmitted disease, because I certainly hadn't given it to her. We hadn't been intimate in months because she always claimed to have a headache. How could she have a headache while she was busy having fun elsewhere? I didn't care if she was sick or if we were in the hospital. I was furious and I needed answers. Hours before, I had been praying for her recovery, and now seeing her caused me more discomfort than she was suffering. She could cry all she wanted, repeat "I'm sorry" until she became dehydrated, but I felt no compassion. I pressed her for the truth. It was the least she deserved. We were in a hospital, but I was losing patience and wanted to scream at her. Finally, after an endless interrogation, she confessed that she had been with other men every chance she got. Most of them were people she met in a bar she frequented when she could, that is, when I wasn't around to ruin their fun. I demanded details. How many? Where did she meet them? How often? And, most importantly, why wasn't I enough for her? For most of my questions, her first response was tears, but eventually, after much insistence, I got answers. Apparently, she would strike up conversations with men in bars, who would buy her drinks and make her feel attractive. She mentioned that she didn't sleep with all of them, which I think she said to avoid appearing easy, but it was a poor attempt on her part, because regardless of the number of men or how many she rejected, she had been unfaithful and contracted a disease as a result. Mind you, she made it clear that they were just casual encounters, nothing more, and that they were fine with it. How could they not be fine with it? She was practically offering them intimacy without commitment. Could she be any more naive? I didn't look into it, but I wonder if the infection had affected her brain, because she seemed to have lost several neurons in the last few hours. Everything that came out of his mouth, which seemed to me to be the most unpleasant place on the planet, was worse than the last. For example, some of the things he said were, "It's something I do occasionally. It's my guilty pleasure. I know it's wrong, but I couldn't help it." My next question was, "How long have you been doing this?" He admitted that he had been doing it for a couple of years. His justification? "I only did it when I was under the influence of alcohol, and then I avoided being intimate with you for a week afterwards, as if I had some kind of consideration for you." You can see from miles away how much respect he has for me, just as you can see from a distance that his behavior was completely inappropriate. He had the audacity to say, "I know it may hurt you, but I never felt anything for any of them. I only love you. That's why I didn't want to be with you. After being with them, I wanted to protect you from that version of me in some way." It was a very silly thing to do on my part, especially since I am now suffering the consequences. I think that is punishment enough, as you can see that karma has caught up with me. All I know is that I love you and I want to stay married to you. I hope you can forgive me so that we can leave here and pick up our marriage where we left off. I exploded. I threw the chair as I got up, because what I was hearing was not just nonsense, it was the words of a complete narcissist. And the worst thing is that his real illness was not the infection. I replied, "You wanted to hurt me. You've been putting my health, my trust, our marriage at risk for years, and you say you didn't want to hurt me? What would have happened if you had infected me?" I lost control and said everything I could think of. But I hope you understand. Not only did she betray me, but I could be in that hospital room if I hadn't been lucky enough not to have been intimate with her. Her excuse was that she always used protection and felt safe. When she tried to take my hand, I pulled away, shouting, "I find you repulsive, and even if you can't infect me through contact, your hands seem dirtier to me than a garbage dump." I left the room while she stayed behind crying. When I spoke to the doctor, he told me I needed to get tested. We hadn't had sex for a while, but I didn't know how long she had been infected. There was a possibility that I was infected too, perhaps asymptomatically. I gave my blood sample and left, while Amelia was kept in hospital to treat her infection. I didn't want to drive home, because I didn't want to sleep there. She had been living in that place, and it felt so contaminated that even burning it to the ground wouldn't help me feel better. I could imagine lying on the sofa or anywhere, and the germs walking all over me. I was completely upset, and everything made me terribly repulsed. As I drove, I reflected on everything she had said to me, which fed my resentment and disgust. Simultaneously, my phone kept vibrating with messages from her, but I was driving, and I didn't want to or couldn't read them. At least that drive gave me a plan. She would not be coming back into my life. I could collect her belongings, clothes, makeup, her ridiculous music collection, her car in the parking lot of our apartment complex. Even so, I spent a couple of nights in a hotel because I refused to go back. And I wasn't exaggerating when I said I felt a tremendous revulsion for my wife and our home. So I hired a team that specialized in cleaning up hazardous biological materials to disinfect the entire apartment. Call me an exaggerator if you will, but I still felt that she had contaminated everything. I also wanted to eliminate any trace of her presence. Later, I found a family law attorney in Texas, and we scheduled a video conference meeting. I wasn't going to waste another day on this woman. I never went back to the hospital. I even got a call from the medical center asking me to pay Amelia's treatment bills. I didn't care. She left angry voicemails because she needed the treatment to get better, and I refused to pay for it. She even mentioned our wedding vows, saying that we promised to be there for each other in sickness and in health. Yes, those vows, where she also had a responsibility to maintain the marriage. She talks about vows, but what about the vows of fidelity? Why didn't she think about that before getting involved with so many people in and around Austin? Lucky her, convincing the hospital administration to provide her with treatment without payment. The day she was discharged, my phone was flooded with calls from the hospital. I ignored them all. I knew they were about the bills, that they had already exceeded insurance coverage. They emailed me copies. I knew she didn't have enough on her credit cards to cover it, but why should I care? She created this mess. She called a friend to help her, who took her to the apartment. I didn't open the door. Her keys were inside. I hadn't taken them when I took her to the hospital. I shouted from inside that she wasn't welcome and that her belongings were in the garage. I had loaded the trunk of her car with her valuables and left the rest in the garage. I knew she would come back, if not to try to convince me, at least to look for her things, so I made the process easier for her. I didn't place them carefully, so if anything broke among her belongings, I'm sorry. No, honestly, I'm not sorry. She begged to be let in. After a while, I saw that her friend was leaving her alone. She was still crying, with nowhere to go. She was begging for a chance to talk, to make things right. She even begged for compassion until she recovered, after which I could do what I wanted. Compassion? Really? You've been with others, contracting diseases, and now you expect me to be considerate of you? Get away from here. The house was already clean, and I wasn't going to risk him introducing any infection. He had the audacity to say, "I know I made a mistake and I hurt you, but we could fix things when I recover." I shouted at her, "It wasn't a mistake to behave like that. I can't even look at you anymore. Get off my property before I call the Hazardous Waste Control Services." I was being cruel, but eventually she left. There were still things left in the garage, but I don't know if she didn't take them because she wasn't interested in them, she didn't have room, or she didn't realize it. Either way, I didn't care. I threw them away the next morning. In the meantime, my results came back negative, thank God. For the first time, I felt something positive after everything that had happened. But the fact that she had put me in that situation was still unforgivable. The doctor reminded me that I should have another test in a month, just in case. I also have an appointment with the lawyer where we will formally initiate the divorce proceedings. At the moment, I don't know where Amelia is and how she is coping with the situation. She was constantly sending me messages, apologizing, begging to at least stay in the apartment until she recovered. Lately, the messages have gone from pleas to threats. She is furious that I abandoned her and threatens to tell everyone what a terrible husband I was. Let her do it. I'll sit back and watch quietly. Update 1. I took the test again and it came back negative, thank God. All this time, Amelia hadn't given up. She called her parents claiming that I had abandoned her in the hospital and thrown her out for no reason. Someone had to tell them the whole story and I was willing to do it. I said to them, "Did she tell you everything? Don't you think you should have asked her for details before accusing me? Since you are here, let me explain. Your daughter was unfaithful to me. She was with several men, she contracted a sexually transmitted disease, and put my health at risk. If that doesn't seem like enough reason to leave her in the hospital and throw her out, we have nothing more to talk about." The expression on their faces immediately told me that they shared my point of view. His mother immediately called Amelia, demanding to know if it was true. I don't know what she answered, but his mother started yelling at her, calling her everything under the sun. His father's face turned completely red. He snatched the phone from his wife and shouted, "You have no shame, and you lied to us. Stay where you are. We are finished with you." He stormed out and his wife followed him, still shouting into the phone, which she had already retrieved. When the divorce papers were ready, my lawyer contacted Amelia to get her address. She gave her parents' address. As soon as she received the papers, her mother called to let me know that they had made sure Amelia received them. She told me that Amelia had been living in a motel near the highway for a week after she was fired, but her condition worsened, so she asked her parents to take her in. She was also fired from her job. One of her coworkers, who apparently did not like her very much, found out about the infection, and the news spread quickly. She was not fired because of her illness, but because of her prolonged absences. Amelia, of course, blamed me, but I didn't care. Her mother asked me not to show compassion, even though she was in recovery. She said Amelia was in a position to face a divorce, even though her mental health had seen better days. She asked me not to postpone it because she needed to face all the consequences. Amelia had exhausted her savings and lost her job, serious consequences that her mother recognized. But she didn't care. She supported the right thing. She even suggested that she could act as an intermediary to avoid me dealing with her directly if I wanted to block her permanently. I wish Amelia was more like my mother-in-law. I can see that my father-in-law married a woman of integrity and not someone irresponsible. Although I blocked her on my phone, Amelia also sent a long email apologizing. If I can comment on that email, it was the first genuine apology. Among other things, she expressed feeling like a ghost of her former self, without money, without a job, with her reputation ruined, socially isolated. Even her siblings refused to talk to her. Her father, a proud man, was humiliated. He resented her presence, and not even her mother supported her. So there was no one who could help her financially at that time. At least no one who wanted to. Yes, her mother is right. Her mental health has deteriorated quite a lot lately, because she thinks he could forgive her or help her in some way now. I'm relieved that she's depressed, because it helps me get through my own depression. It's the least she can do after all she's caused me, and I don't feel guilty for thinking that way at the moment. Update 2. I wanted to check my health status a third time, so I had new tests done to confirm it. You can never be too careful with these things. And a third negative confirmation is always comforting to the spirit. Amelia's spirit is another matter, and if she were to die tomorrow, she would probably go to the worst possible place. Her spirit is not at peace now either, because the karma had only just begun when we went to the hospital. She has been receiving treatment with antibiotics, but although it is the standard treatment, it does not seem to be working in her case. My in-laws are the ones who have been informing me about her medical condition, to a certain extent. The doctors have now prescribed another round of stronger antibiotics to see if they are effective. I am not praying for her or worrying about whether she will get better. I'm not going to feel sorry for someone like that, no matter how bad they have it. The only thing that worries me is that she could die before the divorce is finalized. I don't want to become Amelia's widower. I'd rather get divorced first and leave her fate until afterwards. I know many will think I'm being insensitive, because what she did doesn't justify wishing her a bad outcome. But perhaps she deliberately exposed herself by getting involved with strangers. It could have been me who needed another round of antibiotics. It doesn't matter that my results are now negative. The possibility of contagion with what she did was high enough to know that I was putting my life at risk. I don't think she deserves compassion. Her parents, at the moment, don't even want her at home. They've had enough and have asked her to leave. She is not destitute, but in a center where she receives treatment. An organization in Austin that is responsible for caring for people with these types of conditions. If they knew everything she had done, they would probably use that bed for someone else in need. The change in attitude of her parents, who until now had at least allowed her to stay with them, is due to new revelations. Some of the people she was with were not as unknown as she claimed. There are friends, not very close, of my father-in-law on the list, and also married people that my in-laws know. My father-in-law has had to contact the partners of these people, with all that that implies, to inform them of the situation and recommend that they get tested. Now you will understand why their parents' indignation reached the point of expelling their own sick daughter. They couldn't keep someone like that with them. She is a disgrace to her family and a complete dishonor. Amelia still has debts for her medical expenses, but until she gets better and gets a job, they will have to wait to collect them, if that ever happens. The divorce proceedings are continuing, although I have asked my lawyer to speed them up. I have offered to pay more if necessary, but he explains that the procedure has deadlines that cannot be changed. However, he will take any action that might speed it up, such as handing in documentation in advance. We are in a race against time to end this marriage, one that should never have existed. Update 3. With the passage of time, I have begun to forgive Amelia. Not a forgiveness of the type, let's try again. I don't care about your medical condition. I love you so much that I'm not worried about the risk. Rather, it is I'm tired of holding a grudge because you don't even deserve that. The therapy I started a few months ago has yielded these results. Good results? I don't know, at least I no longer think about it constantly. It's strange to share this now, because the circumstances are not the best, but I've been feeling this way for months. I didn't want to do a brief update where I only mention the above, because here I share something that could make them think that I forgave her, not because of the therapy, but because of what happened. I understand if they don't believe me, I understand how it can be interpreted. Amelia passed away approximately 2 weeks ago, after fighting the disease. It hasn't kept me up at night. It hasn't given me any satisfaction. I didn't celebrate it. Maybe the old me would have, but this new me just got on with life. She was fighting, but the variant she contracted was very resistant. I don't know the exact medical term, or her body couldn't take it anymore after they failed to cure her. Many people were notified about her condition, as I mentioned in my previous update, and the corresponding studies were carried out. I don't have a specific list, but there have been negative results, like mine, and also some positive ones. Maybe one of them infected Amelia, or it was she who infected them. We will never know for sure. On other matters, the divorce was finalized just over a month ago, so I am not a widower at the moment, but a divorcee. For those who consider that there is no difference between the two situations, for me there is. I do not wish to respond to those who ask if I am the widower of a woman who acted as she did. I prefer to be identified as the man who divorced her. It is a semantic issue, but I prefer it that way. I had recently filed a lawsuit against Amelia for putting my life in danger, but that would require more time. time that we no longer have. The lawsuit has been dismissed because there is no longer a defendant. The same has happened to the hospital, which still has outstanding bills in her name. I'm glad I didn't pay them before I found out about her condition. Now I would feel really naive. I have nothing more to share. Perhaps I have not had a fourth analysis because I consider that 3 confirmations are enough to set my mind at ease.